This is build log number 4. Huge shout out to all my sponsors, Ice Mods for providing me the custom sleeved cables, Mod My Mod for providing the radiators, and MemoryC.com for providing the Trident Z memory from G-Skill. Links to all my sponsors will be down in the description below. First, we're going to install one of the front 240mm radiators by AlphaCool. These radiators are fantastic, but there's something unique about the one going on the side where all the components are, is that I have to use a 25mm thick fan on the top and a 15mm thick fan on the bottom. Now, the reason for that is the clearance between where the radiator is and the graphics card. A 25mm will not fit with the 980 Ti, so I have to use a 15mm thick fan. Now, I actually tested quite a few fans and found that the Prelimitech one by far pushed more air through a radiator than the other ones from like Roswell, and there was another one that I tested from Silver something, and I think there was another like industrial one I tested that was like no name, but yeah, so I tested a couple different ones. This one by far pushed the most air, so I'll leave a link to it down in the description below if you're interested, or if you need to fit a slim fan in a tight space. And also, this was the most quiet one, if that makes sense. It was really silent for a thin fan. That's something that I find really hard to actually find when you start getting smaller fans or smaller thickness fans. They tend to always be a lot louder. Next, I'm going to install the 120mm radiator in the back of the case. Now, this one is a little bit thicker than the other ones in the front, and I was worried about clearance issues, but everything fit perfectly. Next, I'm going to be mounting the final radiator to the case, and that is done. Now we're going to be moving on to the pump, where I just have to cut the wires to length and sleeve them and tidy them all up so they look nice and clean. Now, keep in mind when it comes to the little fan cable, just so I can read the RPM of the pump on my computer, I used heat shrink instead of actually sleeving it, just due to the thickness of the cable. The thickness of the cable is not thick enough to sleeve, so you actually just use heat shrink on it. You have to find the small heat shrink to fit it. I found it at Home Depot, actually, out of all places. I didn't actually find it online. It's actually kind of weird. Not a lot of computer stores carry slim heat shrink. I don't know why. Now I'm going to figure out where all the fittings go, and then it is time to bend some tube. Now, I'm not really going to go in depth on how to bend tube here in this video, but I will in a later video, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for that video. So from the back side of the pump, it's kind of hard to show you this on video, so I'm just going to tell you there's going to be a tube, and it's going to come out at a right angle, right out of the pump. So here's the pump, right? Okay, here's the back side of the motherboard tray, right? So there's going to be a 90-degree fitting here, right? And so the tube's going to go this way, right? And then come down, right? And then there's going to be a Q block there, and there will be a valve there where I will be able to drain the whole system. And then there will be another piece of tube that will go over through the bottom of the case up to the bottom graphics card, and from there we'll go into the second graphics card and into the 120mm radiator on the back side, from the 120mm radiator into the CPU block, from the CPU block back into the front radiator, from that front radiator into the other side radiator, and back into the pump. For this build, I actually decided to do all the bends instead of using fittings to do the bends, because I figured this is a small build already and I wanted you to be able to see as much fluid as possible. And so that's why I chose to actually bend the tube versus doing the fittings. Now, that's honestly a personal preference, and it actually changes from build to build. And this build, I thought it looked better with just bending the tube versus doing it with fittings. Other builds, I don't feel that way. So it really depends on the build, on the color scheme, how much fluid you're going to show, how much you're not going to show. Since this is divided into two, you're seeing a lot less tubing already than you would even in like a Bit Phoenix case, I think. So the pump now sits a little bit higher than I wanted it to. The original mounting idea I had didn't actually work, so I actually had to go back to the drawing board and move the whole pump up a little bit, and this is what it looks like now. Now it's not going to line up perfectly with the hole that's cut out on the side panel, but I'm going to probably include some artwork to make it all flow. So I went ahead and did a quick leak test and everything looks good. Now I went ahead and drained the system because I'm going to do a longer leak test, but only after I install all the cables. And the reason for that is because the cables could put pressure on some of the tubing. Hopefully it doesn't, but it could. And in the chance it does, I want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to be putting too much pressure on a tube where it's going to come loose or leak. So anyways, that's it for this video. Make sure to stay tuned for all that coming up in the next video, and we're going to be finishing the front panel of the case, and we're going to see if we can add a Wi-Fi card into the case. Now that's going to be a little bit of a challenge because there's no more room on the motherboard on the back of the computer case, but there is another PCI slot in the computer case, so we're going to try to get a ribbon to run to the bottom. It should be kind of interesting. Might work, might not work, but we're going to try. So make sure to stay tuned for that in build log number 5. Peace. This is the Radiator SL5000.